up, YouTube? It's your boy Johnny. Back in here with another video. Today's video, facts about slavery part 2 that they don't teach you in school. The Thomas Sowell reaction. Man, you know what I know is they start everything with black people being enslaved, and that's the root of all evil. And I just know life is so much deeper than that. Everything is cause and effect. So you can't convince me that just the creation was black people being enslaved by white people. There's so much more to history than that. And so I'm just here to shine some light in a dark area that gets overlooked by the mainstream media and just pretty much propagandized in all school systems. So if you could hit the like button for me. If you haven't, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you like the video, share this far, far and wide. Because a lot of kids need to, grown-ups need to see this too, but all high school age kids definitely need to be enlightened about Thomas Sowell.
One of the many sad signs of our times is that people are not only playing the race card, they are playing the slavery card, which is supposedly the biggest trump of all. At the so-called Million Man March in Washington, poet Maya Angelou rang all the changes on slavery, at a rally billed as forward-looking and as being about black independence rather than white guilt. Meanwhile, best-selling author Dinesh D'Souza was being denounced in the media for having said that slavery was not a racist institution. First of all, anyone familiar with the history of slavery around the world knows that its origins go back thousands of years, and that slaves and slave owners were very often of the same race. Those who are ignorant of all this, or who think of slavery in the United States as if it were the only slavery, go ballistic when anyone tells them that this institution was not based on race.
Isn't it also interesting the political party that owns slaves is the biggest champion of reparations and hiding the history of slavery and tearing down statues? You know, the Democrats, you would think they would be proud of their history of the Confederacy and how there was the Dixiecrats and all that in the South. Yet they want to eliminate their own history and play the role of we've always been on the good side. We've always been the good guys. And, you know, I'm a firm believer the devil's greatest trick is to pretend that he doesn't exist while he's manipulating everybody in the world.
Blacks were not enslaved because they were black, but because they were available at the time. Whites enslaved other whites in Europe for centuries before the first black slave was brought to the Western Hemisphere. Only late in history were human beings even capable of crossing an ocean to get millions of other human beings of a different race. In the thousands of years before that, not only did Europeans enslave other Europeans, Asians enslaved other Asians, Africans enslaved other Africans, and the native peoples of the Western Hemisphere enslaved other native peoples of the Western Hemisphere. D'Souza was right. Slavery was not about race.
We're getting dumbed down to think everything is based off our skin color. You know and I know. I'm a spirit inside of a body. My body is a house. I didn't choose my skin color. I didn't pick to be brown skin. I didn't pick if I was biracial. I didn't have a say so in that. I'm just here. And I think if we all can step back and grab that concept, everything that's thrown at you is a label by the world. You're black, you're white, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. You know, what do you truly feel about yourself? It's all mind control, and I think though we aren't in physical slavery, mental slavery is real. Mental slavery is what has control over most humans walking the earth today.
The fact that his critics are ignorant of history is their problem. What was peculiar about the American situation was not just that slaves and slave owners were of different races, but that slavery contradicted the whole philosophy of freedom on which the society was founded. If all men were created equal, as the Declaration of Independence said, then blacks had to be depicted as less than men. While the antebellum South produced a huge volume of apologetic literature trying to justify slavery on racist grounds, no such justification was considered necessary in vast reaches of the world and over vast expanses of time. In most parts of the world, people saw nothing wrong with slavery. Strange as that seems to us today, 100 years ago, only Western civilization saw anything wrong with slavery.
And it's hard to say it seems strange because in today I think we all know there's slave labor in China, But the Hollywood elites and Nike and those big corporations, Apple, they're just fine using slave labor when it benefits them.
And 200 years ago, only a minority in the West thought it was wrong. Africans, Arabs, Asians, and others not only maintained slavery long after it was abolished throughout the Western Hemisphere, they resisted all attempts of the West to stamp out slavery in their lands during the age of imperialism. Only the fact that the West had greater firepower and more economic and political clout enabled them to impose the abolition of slavery, as they imposed other Western ideas on the non-Western world. Those who talk about slavery as if it were just the enslavement of blacks by whites ignore not only how widespread this institution was and how far back in history it went, they also ignore how recently slavery continued to exist outside of Western civilization. While slavery was destroyed in the West during the 19th century, the struggle to end slavery elsewhere continued well into the 20th century, and pockets of slavery still exist to this moment in Africa. But there is scarcely a peep about it from black leaders in America who thunder about slavery in the past. If slavery were the real issue, then slavery among flesh and blood human beings alive today would arouse far more outcry than past slavery among people who are long dead. The difference is that past slavery can be cashed in for political benefits today, while slavery in North Africa only distracts from these political goals. Worse yet, talking about slavery in Africa would undermine the whole picture of unique white guilt, requiring unending reparations.
The issue has always been profit over people. Whatever ones step up to be the so-called black leaders, they always put profit over really helping the people. We've heard about the March on Washington main stage and Martin Luther King and the other civil rights leaders being paid. We know Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. We know LeBron James is paid. Colin Kaepernick has some new ice cream coming out with Ben and Jerry's. Everyone uses black pain to make their pockets fat, while the average everyday person suffers. And it's so disheartening. It's, how do you cry about what white people do to you when your own people do you 10 times worse?
While the Western world was just as guilty as other civilizations when it came to enslaving people for thousands of years, it was unique only in finally deciding that the whole institution was immoral and should be ended. But this conclusion was by no means universal even in the Western world, however obvious it may seem to us today. Thousands of free blacks owned slaves in the antebellum South, and years after the Emancipation Proclamation in the United States, whites as well as blacks were still being bought and sold as slaves in North Africa and the Middle East. Anyone who wants reparations based on history will have to gerrymander history very carefully. Otherwise, practically everybody would owe reparations to practically everybody else.
So when you study history, you learn we all been bamboozled, we been tricked, we been manipulated. It's all to make profit. You can find Frederick Douglass quotes about people manipulating government to get profit. You can find Booker T. Washington, he states in the Negro Problem that the black man got just as much out of slavery as the white man. And he also states that the black man has to learn the difference between worked and working. See, being worked is slavery. That's profiting for someone else. Working is bettering for yourself, right, for your family, creating a legacy, creating a generation. And we all have the spirit of infinite intelligence inside of us. There's no power inside of one man that's not in every man. And so we got to step out of this mass psychosis of I'm less than because I'm black and I'm in America and I can't be this and I can't be that. And we have to accept the fact that we are greatness. We are pure spirit in human form, and turn that into something special. Manifest whatever you want, Put the work in. I'm not saying that you can have a brick road tomorrow, but put a brick down every day and defy the odds. Don't let society tell you what you can and can't be based off of some stuff that had nothing to do with you. Create your legacy for yourself. Black, white, yellow, brown. Anybody could be anything that they want. And we're here to uplift that and spread light and spread a positive message. We're destroying the false narrative that slavery can stop you. Booker T. Washington was an actual slave. and Tuskegee Institute is still standing. So if something from the 1800s is still standing, what's going to be your legacy? What's going to be around in 200 years to show everybody that you can overcome and you can beat the odds? Until next time, you two, spread love, spread positive vibes. Be the change you wish to see in the world, and we out.